Hey, folks, and welcome back to Glenn and Adrian's Rock Talk. That's Adrian.
And there's Glenn.
And today we're going to talk to you about Rush's fifth album, A Farewell to Kings. Rush's fifth album came out in 1977 and reached number 33 on the Billboard charts. It did pretty well, well enough that it kind of dragged up that album and the previous two albums, All the World's a Stage and 2112, into gold status. So that was a great thing for them. It's got a couple of extended pieces, and then it's got several shorter ones on there. And both extended pieces are really amazing. Instrumentally, in particular, in fact, one of them, Xanadu, is probably my favorite Rush song. And I heard Rick Beato say recently that he thought it was their best song because it's just amazing. I've always, that's been my favorite since I first started listening to Rush when it was on Exit Stage Left.
I had three favorites from this album, and Xanadu was one of them. The others are the title track and Cygnus X1.
This is probably a good time for me to show, actually. I've got an album purchased in the early 80s version of Farewell to Kings. It's got, of course, the original cover, which in the 40th anniversary editions, they completely changed the cover.
Oh.
But it was done by Hugh Syme, I think his name is pronounced, S-Y-M-E, who is the same artist that did most of the Rush covers from Caress of Steel on, so including the Starman and all that. So pretty interesting. I think this was a rundown. It was a demolished hotel or something. I'm not exactly sure. And then they brought in their prop, the marionette, Farewell to Kings, and you can see on the back you've got those. That's how you would control the marionette.
Yes.
Of course, this is a 6-song album. On the inside, we've got, and note the yellowing. This copy's old.
The lyrics. You got the lyrics on one side, and they got a picture on the other.
And all of the credits, too, including the coach driver, C-Factor, Lightning, and crew. I mean, they really, lots of credits in here. And I know that this is one of my earliest owned albums because I've got the whiteout on it there. When I was about 17, maybe I just turned 18, I was leaving for a trip overseas and bringing a bunch of records, and I wanted to make sure I could get them back whenever I came back home. So that's how I did it, whiteout on the on the spine. Yeah, so everything that was in Norway still has that, and I'm happy to say I still have a lot of those. And
that's a good idea.
Yeah, it worked.
I guess so.
This is the booklet that goes inside the 40th anniversary. Lots of great pictures in here.
Oh, yeah.
All of the lyrics, Madrigal and what have you. It's really nice stuff. Anyway, a really lovely, I'm not sure how big this booklet is, but it's generous,
Yeah.
Soft.
Yeah, it looks pretty big.
But generous, and the whole essay in the front. And this is what the new cover looks like.
Oh.
Yeah, so
boy.
My guess
is... marionette on the front cover there?
He's computer generated. Yeah.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, so anyway, we'll put something up, put a graphic up for everybody. Yeah. And this is the 4-album variety. It's got nice shots in there and everything. And
wow, that's really something. All I got is a lousy CD.
Yeah, well, I mean, really, it's about the music, right? So this is a 4-album edition, and the other 3 albums are from one show, February 20, 1978, a well-recorded show from that tour. It's a great thing to have. I absolutely love Rush in 1978. It's hard to do better, really.
Yeah.
What happened was this was the first album that they recorded outside of Toronto, and they traveled to Wales to a studio called Rockfield Studios, which kind of had an outdoor area where they could set up and record some things, and that's exactly what they did. First song on the album, Farewell to King, starts with an acoustic guitar, and that's actually played by Alex Lifeson outdoors, and there's 2 microphones set up outside. I think they were about 10 feet apart, and he just walked around while playing. And if you listen to the album with headphones, you'll hear him starting on the left side, and he's there for a little bit, and then suddenly he's walking over here, and then he's on the right side, and it's really cool. And what's nice is they had synthesizers out there too, so that whole opening part is actually live outdoors, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I was pretty impressed by it.
Yeah, and there's little birds that they picked up that also ended up starting Xanadu. They used the same birds there, just right outside the studio. The song I love the most on A Farewell to Kings is without a doubt Xanadu. There is kind of a roadmap to the lyrics on that song because it was inspired by Kubla Khan, which is a poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He was the same guy that wrote The Rime of the Ancient Mariner that Iron Maiden did a suite on.
Yes.
Yeah. And I remember actually reading this for a college course, I think, or maybe a late high school. They speak specifically of Xanadu. It's a really amazing city built by an emperor in China. You can dive deeper for more details on that. It's pretty interesting. But some of the lyrics here are, miracle of rare device, a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. Referencing, that was referenced in Neil Peart's lyrics, as was, for he on honeydew hath fed and drunk the milk of paradise, which reminds me of when Kiss was making fun of Rush while they were both on the same tour. When they were touring for this album, they would leave signs on Rush's mic stand saying, "I will dine on honeydew," and they'd leave little elf slippers at the base of the mic stand and things like that. They'd kind of prank them a little bit. They said they loved the music, but they just, apparently they just laughed a lot. But boy, it's stood the test of time, I would dare say, as well as anything has from that era.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, if you're interested, go read Kubla Khan and then read the lyrics of Xanadu, and you'll see a whole lot of parallels. And might even get interested in some English literature. Thank you, Neil. They did call him the professor, didn't they? So if you haven't heard Xanadu, go listen to it. You might want to listen to the version on Exit Stage Left, but really it's hard to go wrong. So let's talk about side 2 a little bit. People needed a little more time, I think, to warm up to side 2 of this record, but it does begin with Closer to the Heart, which was an American hit. It was it was probably their biggest hit for a little while there.
Yeah, off of that album, I'm pretty sure.
Till Permanent Waves or something, yeah. It helped establish them. That's part of why they went gold with 3 albums that year. So good for them. It's funny. This is one of those hookless wonders. There's no hook to it. Every pop producer would be saying, "There's no hook. Where's the hook?" Neil Peart actually was joined with a guy named Peter Talbot in writing the lyrics for this one.
Oh.
So, but there's 4 stanzas of 4 lines, and philosophers and plowmen each must know his part to sow a new mentality closer to the heart. Very, very cool words, as usual. Pretty nice song. Has a ripping little solo, a great hook. Musical hook, a riff. Beautiful acoustic guitars going on.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff. And a nice version is featured on Exit Stage Left as well. So that's followed by Cinderella Man, which is a little bit more... it's one of those that you either like or you don't like. Now, I like it. I've listened to it several times, especially in the last week. One thing that most people don't know about this, because it's frequently misstated in references, is that Geddy Lee wrote these lyrics. This is not a Neil Peart lyric sheet, but it's about a movie. I think Mr. Deeds Goes to Washington was the name, but it was also known as Cinderella Man. It's about a guy who becomes really wealthy all of a sudden and decides he's going to spread that wealth. He's going to build things, for the community or help people make a living, things like he's essentially going to give it away to much of the society to help out and to try to raise the society. And so everybody calls him nuts, like that's where Cinderella Man comes from. It's like, he's a nutty buddy. He can't. He even says a manic depressive. He walks in the rain, delusions of grandeur, visions of splendor. Because he was human, because he had goodness, because he was moral, they called him insane. So kind of interesting. You might not know that unless you took a really good look at the lyrics. And that's really what the movie was about. It's kind of along those lines too. And this thing has so many cool little musical interludes and pieces in it that are highly satisfying. The one that was the hardest to get around was the actual slow down hook of Cinderella Man, because I don't know, doesn't sound like a hard rock song on first listen, and then oh, I see. Okay, this is actually way above my head. That's what's going on here. Because the whole thing is Cinderella Man, hang on to your plans. Try as they might, they cannot steal your dreams. It's like, you want to do this for people.
Makes sense now.
Don't let them gaslight you. Just go ahead and do it. And that's a good life lesson right there, folks. Everybody can learn from that. So yeah, I think it's a pretty cool track, and there are a lot of pieces to it that I like. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I have a better understanding of the song anyway, because a lot of times I don't pay as much attention to lyrics as like the music, and I thought the music was okay.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, Rush is one of those bands that makes you go to school, or if you do, you get even more out of it. It's already astonishing what the music is most of the time. But of course, Neil Peart is just about as good a lyricist as he is a drummer, or was, and he's writing classic pieces of music. Of course, this is the Geddy Lee sheet, but he's essentially doing the same idea. It's basically the same idea what the band does for songs, So that's that one. So next track is the shortest one on the record, 2 minutes and 35 seconds, called Madrigal. Now, madrigal, if you were to go look up the definition, it basically means a little poem that's a love song. And that is what this is. Basically, so when the dragons grow too mighty to slay with pen or sword, in other words, when it gets to be a real hassle to deal with the dragons, he'd rather go, I long to turn my path homeward to stop a while with you. And that's the essential thing. It's essentially a love ballad, which is kind of interesting. This track is the least interesting to me. There's really not much going on. I mean, I think they could have not had this on the record and it would have been okay. I don't mind that it's there, but it's kind of filler. It's like something for your ears to do before Cygnus X1 rolls up, on you, which is the next track.
Exactly. I've tried to study the song. I guess I'm not much of a lyric person, but I like the way the song sounds. I like the music to the song. There's a lot of interesting musical ideas.
Well, that's for sure.
Start with the
analog synthesizers.
Yeah, analog synthesizers, and there's that voice that goes through the effects, the sound effects in the beginning.
Oh, okay.
In the constellation of Cygnus, or a mysterious invisible force. I think that's how it starts.
That's what that's about there. Oh, yeah. I love the mixing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They did a great job.
Yeah, the thing I love about this song is the way that the band essentially is encapsulated in one piece of sound that travels around and expands and then gets smaller. It's like three-dimensional sound, and against that is also this soundscape we're just listening to there. It's just very interesting how they mix that. And of course, they had to do it all by hand. This is the 70s.
Yeah.
And
didn't have automated mixing boards.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't think they had them yet. They may have had a really ancient, early version, but for the most part, it's people and their hands on the board doing this. May have been more than one person shifting the faders and everything.
Often is more than one person at the mixing board. Mm-hmm. 3 or 4 of them.
And they did the same thing in that first hemisphere side, which is, of course, book 2 of Cygnus.
Yeah, Cygnus X1, book 2. One of the parts I like.
So yeah, patterns of 1, 2, 1, 3, and I think they did that over and over for a while. So yeah, very adventurous. And here, let's go a little further. So there's that and shifting time signatures there.
It's like that. I mean, this song is full of them.
Yeah. Really amazing. But again, this is one of those with the lyric sheet, and shame on me. I should have gone a little deeper, but like I said, it's like going to school. If you want to do a Rush album properly, the lyrics are very cool. In the constellation of Cygnus, there lurks a mysterious invisible force, the black hole of Cygnus X1. It says, 6 stars of the Northern Cross, in mourning for their sister's loss, in a final flash of glory, nevermore to grace the night. Nevermore to grace the night.
Yeah. A star that implodes and becomes a black hole, I guess.
Sounds that way. Through the void to be destroyed. Is there something more atomized at the core, or through the astral door to soar? Okay, that's a little rhymey, but good words anyway. And then talking about setting a course just east of Lyra and northwest of Pegasus, sailed across the Milky Way. So there's a starship out there watching this happen, I guess. Mm-hmm. Something like that. Something worth checking out much more closely, and maybe we'll do that in the future. We'll take on both and look at the lyrics and try to work it all out and make sense of it for you all and for us. So overall, not a very long album, but typical for the time. It was 37 minutes long. Like I say, just such a great listen. Even with the song that I think is kind of extraneous, Madrigal, you could just play this thing over and over on repeat and might not notice for a while. It all plays very well. So in terms of Rush albums, I put this one near the top of the list. I think my favorite ones are probably 2112, Farewell to Kings, Hemispheres, and maybe also Permanent Waves. Just that meat of their discography is the stuff I really love. And obviously there's stuff on all the other albums pretty much, particularly the ones near that time on either side, but they really did some great work. By the way, Clockwork Angels is a fantastic record if you haven't heard it. It's their last one from 2012.
Oh, I'll check it out.
Well worth your time, everybody. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I could come up with a favorite Rush album of mine.
Yeah, it's a tall order.
I like them all. I like all the ones from what is it? Caress, Fly by Night to Signals, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's been some other stuff they've done that I liked. There are a few songs from Grace Under Pressure. I've heard some good stuff that was more recent than that. I wish I could name it. But
yeah, well, as a matter of fact, if you have the Clockwork Angels tour, there's a lot of the newer stuff on that. And it's worth it to go back and listen to those albums that came afterwards, because Rush is gone now. And so they're done. Their work is finished. It's nice just to know that there's more material to listen to. And as a matter of fact, it does tend to wear well with time. The more you listen to it, the more you appreciate it. Like I said, those 80s albums, I was never a fan of until fairly recently, maybe the last, 5 or 10 years. I think after Clockwork Angels came out, I started checking out the later stuff more, because that tour had a lot of stuff from the 80s albums and other rarities from afterwards. It's just well worth checking it out. All the rest of the albums from the 80s and even the 90s. Counterparts is a pretty good album. It's kind of it's got a slight grunge flavor to it, but it's really good. It has a lot of great riffs.
Rush doing grunge, wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, they
can't imagine what that sounds like.
It's a good album. It's worth giving a listen to. Really, grunge essentially is classic rock by newer players who have other influences than just classic rock.
I'm not putting down grunge. It just doesn't sound like something that Rush would do.
Yeah. Well, they would do that, like they did in the 80s. They kind of followed.
Black Sabbath doing progressive jazz or something like that.
And that's what they did, though. You saw what happened with them in the 80s. They even got the 80s haircuts and the skinny ties and everything.
Yeah.
After having the kimonos during, this Farewell Kings tour, they all had silk kimonos from Japan, So it's what they did. It's endearing now, It's seeing Geddy Lee with a funny haircut, in the 80s. But the music speaks for itself. It stands tall. The whole catalog is really worth a listen at some point or another. It's worth going through each album just to know what's there. They also did a pretty good covers album, by the way, which I think they may have even covered 7 and 7 Is, possibly. And Summertime Blues by Blue Cheer.
Oh, boy.
It's called Crossroads. I think it was an EP that came out in 2004. So.
Oh, gee, I'll have to check that out.
But anyway, I would say Farewell to Kings is one of the cornerstones of any Rush collection. It's absolutely necessary to have this album for your own personal enjoyment as a listener. This is going to help. If you ever saw Rush, tell us about it down below. I was lucky enough. I saw them on the Clockwork Angels tour, which is great. I wish I'd seen them more often. Any experiences you've had, if you interacted with them, which they have been known to do, just interact with people, very nice guys, or anything else, let us know what's in your collection. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like. And if you'd like to hear more of us, please subscribe. We do maybe 2-3 videos a week. We'd love to have you along for the ride. So, reporting from here and from over there, and we will catch you soon.
See y'all later.